Welcome back, everyone, to the mega series on the destruction of Indian history by Marxists. We started this series with the eminent scholar Sandeep Balakrishna 7 episodes back instead of putting a time frame. And in the last episode, we spoke about Irfan Habib. Sandeep, with his fact based knowledge, unraveled Irfan Habib. The episode was illuminating and disturbing to say the least, and I'm sure many of you felt the same way. So, in this episode, which is the 8th and the concluding episode of this mega series, we shall talk to Sandeep Balakrishna and get him to enlighten us on the ward, so to speak, the chosen disciple of Ram Sharan Sharma. You may recollect that one of the episodes in the series was dedicated to Ram Sharan Sharma, and Sandeep there again unraveled Ram Sharan Sharma and all the distortions he did. He was the founding chairman of the ICHR, and D.N JHA was his chosen disciple, and he continued the damage that his guru had started. So, with that, for this final episode, let's start talking to Sandeep Balakrishna on D.N JHA. Hi, Sandeep. So, like I said, we shall now delve into the finale of this mega series on the destruction of Indian history by Marxists. And I personally, and I'm sure many of the viewers who have been following this series, would like to thank you profusely for all the knowledge that you put forward, all the vile and toxicity, the bile that all these historians unleashed on multiple generations. I think your series would serve as an antidote to all of that, and I hope it reaches a wider audience apart from the ones who've been following us regularly. And there has been some great feedback, so thank you again, Sandeep. So, Sandeep, like I said, in this final episode, we shall talk about D.N JHA, who was a student of the eminent, in quotes, Ram Sharan Sharma. So, I happened to chance upon his description on Wikipedia, and it says they described him, the two feathers in his cap, so to speak. One was that he challenged the communalization of Indian history, and the other was that he challenged the sanctity of cows for Hindus. So, these two gems that Wikipedia has attributed to him. Would you just like to give us some background into him, apart from the fact that he was the student of Ram Sharan Sharma, and then we can get into some of his lovely contributions.
Yeah, so like you rightly said the context, Parag, for the final episode of this mega series on the Marxist destruction, rather annihilation of Indian history. I am at a loss for words to even describe the scale, the extent and the depth of this annihilation. I don't remember if I have mentioned this in the previous episode, but what Marxists have done to Indian education and specifically to Indian history is that they have made it irreparable. The kind of scholarship that is needed to do proper, solid historical research in Indian history, by capturing institutions, they have pretty much destroyed the discipline itself. So that is the extent to an irreparable extent. So, consider someone like, say, R.C. Majumdar or Dr. Shama Shastri or say even Professor A.S. Altekar, all these stalwarts. They were, yes, historical scholars of history, but they were also scholars, multidisciplinary scholars. So those used to be the standards. Forget standards by, completely politicizing and ideologicalizing. It's not a word, but yeah. Usurping this whole discipline, they have killed the discipline in such a fashion that it can't be retrieved. Because quantity is also quality. There are, in a country of more than 140 crore people, you hardly find about 200 scholars who can match the standards, even 10% of the standards of these stalwarts. So that That is the consequence. But anyway, coming to D.N JHA, his full name is Dwijendra Narayan Jha.
Okay.
A proper Brahmin. His first name itself signifies Brahmin. Dwijendra means the Lord of Dvijas. Dvija is Brahmin, synonym for Brahmin. So the Lord of Brahmins. That's his first name, meaning. So D.N JHA. He was the disciple of Ram Sharan Sharma, like you mentioned. What is interesting is that D.N JHA was born in 1940. Pre-independence. And by the time he, took his education, started his, entered college, started pursuing his BA, Ram Sharan Sharma was already a professor, right? Meaning D.N JHA is the second generation Marxist ideologue.
Okay. First generation being the likes of Ram
Thapar, Ram Sharan Sharma, those guys. Right? So he is the second generation or 1.5 generation. If you go all the way back to people like Muhammad Habib. So 1.5 generation, so second generation guy, D.N JHA. So that brings us to this phenomenon of this Marxist, production of generations of committed Marxist ideologues who happen to study Indian history.
Can I ask you to repeat? You had a very polite line for this factory. What was it?
National Ordnance Factory for producing traitors.
Yeah. So he's a product of that.
He was put through that machine and then through that assembly line.
Okay.
And then he became one of the products of that factory.
Worth repeating. So I thought.
So he turned out needless. He turned out to be a completely worthy pupil of this eminent distorian, his guru, R.S. Sharma. But in the overall reckoning of the, Marxist distorians food chain, D.N JHA ranks rather low in that pecking order.
Okay.
Right. He's not as well known as, the other eminent historians, Romila Thapar, Irfan Habib, Satish Chandra, all these guys. What you can describe him overall is that he was more of a loyal camp follower, content to serve his more powerful masters like, R.S. Sharma, Romila Thapar and that club. And like his masters, D.N JHA's writings, his activism, they also follow the standard template, which includes naked Hindu bashing, a glorification of the worst of Islamic atrocities, whitewashing the brutal record of Muslim rule, abuse of RSS, a non-stop ranting against what he calls the communalization and the saffronization of Indian history, and finally his disgusting role as a hired hack of the pro-Babri Masjid group in the Ayodhya episode. With that background, let's look at his record in a systematic fashion. D.N JHA has written a total of 15 books. He has edited several books and also written numerous Marxist pamphlets with regard to Indian history. And here are some titles of his books which leave no room for ambiguity. 1. Holy Cow. Beef in Indian dietary traditions. 2. The myth of the holy cow. 3. Brahmanical intolerance in early India.
Yeah, that is another reference in Wikipedia.
I'll come to that.
Yeah, Brahmanical intolerance.
Next, Drink of Immortality. Essays on distillation and alcohol use in ancient India. 5. Feudal social formation in early India. 6. Society and Ideology in India. Essays in honor of Professor R.S. Sharma.
Oh, he's written essays in honor of his guru. Okay.
Usually they have these, it's an well-known academic tradition to bring out commemoration volumes, felicitation volumes for scholars.
Eulogizing
well-known scholars.
Okay.
This has nothing to do with left and right.
Yeah.
The feudal order, state, society and ideology in early medieval India. So these are some of the representative titles of his books, which leave no room for doubt about contents inside those books. But among all Marxist historians, D.N JHA is the crudest, and among all Marxist historians, D.N JHA also seems to have had a rather morbid fetish to compulsively detect the use of beef and liquor in ancient India. I mean,
the chosen titles itself.
He seems to have had a lifelong fixation for these two topics for God knows what reason. And in fact, Jha has made an explicit proclamation that beef eating and liquor drinking in ancient India was one of his life's missions. I mean,
it was a mission.
It was a mission in his own words. And he has also openly declared that one of his goals as a historian was, and I quote him, to challenge popular beliefs of the sanctity of cow and Indian beef eating tradition. Close quote. Look at the verbiage, man.
And what a mission.
What do you mean Indian beef eating tradition? We'll come to that.
Yeah.
And sometime in the 90s, he gave an interview to Outlook magazine. And there he tells the interviewer, I think her name is Sheila Reddy or something. He tells the interviewer that the purpose behind writing that outrageous book, The Myth of the Holy Cow, the purpose behind writing it and the goal, his goal for abusing the sanctity of cows was, quote, लातों के भूत बातों से नहीं मानते.
Exceeding his brief.
These are his words, verbatim. He is supposed to be a
historian,
scholar of history. लातों के भूत, यहाँ भूत कौन है? I'll tell you who the booth is. And some of the gems, I've culled out some of the gems from that book. 1. The Hindu reverence attached to the cow is a complete myth. 2. Beef was an integral part of the Hindu diet since ancient times. 3. D.N JHA claims that his most original discovery is that the seeds of present-day communalism were sowed by those Brahmins in ancient India who declared the cow as a sacred animal. These are his words, not mine. So the question arises, logical question arises. By declaring the cow as sacred thousands of years ago, remember who declared it? Brahmins. Okay. By declaring it as inviolable, as sacred, how did they, plant the seeds of today's what Jha calls as communalism? How? Answer. You see, in that very, very ancient time, those evil and crafty Brahmins in ancient India.
He uses these words, evil and crafty.
Crafty Brahmins, okay, a lot of abuses. Those crafty Brahmins of ancient India, they should have actually foreseen that centuries later, Muslim invaders from outside would come and slaughter cows on an epic scale and then eat its meat as a pious act in the service of Islamic faith. Therefore, the Brahmins of that ancient period should have desisted from establishing the Hindu law that prohibits cow slaughter and makes it punishable.
So this is actually sacrilege of the highest order.
All right, so this is where the train of logic leads. You see, had these crafty Brahmins in that ancient time, had they not condemned cow slaughter thousands of years ago, there would have been absolutely no communalism in India today. Ergo, the prime culprits, the prime causers of communalism in India in 20th century are the Brahmins who lived in the Vedic period. You know what is even worse than this? This kind of nonsense was celebrated, it was awarded as scientific historical analysis. It was taught, pages and pages of papers would be written on these lines, calling it scientific historical analysis for more than half a century.
This is sanctifying sacrilege of the highest order.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, if I'm asked, was there any outrage reaction at that time?
There were a lot of outrage, because when he wrote this, the myth of the holy cow, a lot of Hindu groups naturally protested, and they called for banning that book and punishing D.N JHA. And I'll tell you what he says in response to that. Okay. But before that, the seed, the mentality, D.N JHA's mentality for, specifically targeting practices, beliefs and customs and traditions which Hindus hold sacred, lies in his inveterate self-loathing.
Okay.
He was a Brahmin, and he was also the Brahmin abuser, the Brahmin reviler of the first order, of the worst sort. This is self-hatred. And, in one of his books titled Brahmanical Intolerance in Early India, it betrays D.N JHA's full-time obsession of writing miles and miles of hate speech against Brahmins. That whole book is nothing but a litany of Brahmin abuse. And I think we can leave it at that. I don't want to read out all the kind of nonsense, because totally filthy. Okay. After this, let's look at one more vile book. Okay. Its title, Adulterous Gods and Their Inebriated Women.
Adulterous gods and their inebriated women.
Okay. And here in this book, D.N JHA makes a boisterous claim that, quote, it is a research work on Hindu gods and their fallen women. Let me read out some gems from this work also. Okay. His words. Lord Indra is rowdy and immoral. 2. The god Krishna has a rather questionable personal record. 3. Lord Shiva is just a development of phallic cults. 4. Bhakti is just a reflection of the complete dependence on the serfs or tenants or on the landowners in the context of the Indian feudal society. Okay, this is the origin of Bhakti apparently. And in fact, number 5, in fact, Hindu deities did not exist at all. Okay, Hindu deities were actually imported from outside, because you see in the Marxist fantasy land, Hindus have neither produced nor done anything original in any field.
And they were imported from where?
What the British could not do, these people have done.
Yeah, easily. I mean, but to what extent? I mean, D.N JHA...
It doesn't end there. Wait. Hold your horses. Okay. Take this quote from example. For example, quote, the Greek ambassador speaks of Heracles being worshipped in the Mathura region. This god may have been Krishna of the later legends. Next, the Shri deity identified with Lakshmi, the wife of Vishnu, may have originally been non-Aryan fertility goddess who found her way into the Brahmanical religion. Okay, let me read out, some other examples in this regard. Okay, so he says again on Bhakti, Jha says, Bhakti was in tune with the social outlook of the times when the feudatories considered themselves as meditating at the feet of their masters. Okay, no writer of fiction can come up with anything close to this. Okay, and let's take another example. This one about Brahmins. So he says, the Brahmins and the warriors had formed a class alliance. And therefore, as elsewhere in India, from now on, the Brahmin priests began to play the second fiddle to the ruler and strike Mephistophelian bargains. Okay? So what is the evidence? Remember, all these things are, they, like I said, they belong to the realm of nonsense fantasy.
It is offensive, baseless.
No fiction writer can conjure something like this, remotely like this. Okay, let's see what happens. What happens after this unholy class alliance between the priestly Brahmins and the ruling class? What happens after that? Okay, after this unholy alliance was formed, that may have led to the rudimentary commodity production and trade. The Vaishyas may have engaged in trade, and they formed the bulk of the may have engaged in trade, and Shudras were meant to serve the three higher Varnas and formed the bulk of the laboring masses. Most likely, the community exercised some sort of a general control over them. In this sense, they may be compared with the helots of Sparta. You can't make this up.
And he uses the words may have been,
may, likely. I'll tell you, this is part of their standard methodology, their technique. Okay, and then here is one more. The emergence of the Gahapati from the Vedic householder to a comparatively wealthy head of the household may indicate the growing disparity of wealth within society. Common people, slaves, and laborers seem to have coveted his wealth and wished him harm. Often he is depicted as keeping a bodyguard to defend himself. You find zero evidence. Remember, these are not postulates. These are being told as truths of Indian history stretching over a span of minimum 7,000 years. Okay, they've written this with a straight face, okay? After, claiming that Hindus had to borrow their gods and their deities from alien cultures, they also had to borrow their art, what is known as various Hindu schools of art. That also had to be borrowed. So here is what D.N JHA says. The main inspiration of Maurya art was perhaps derived from Persian imperial art.
Okay. Every aspect has been borrowed. Nothing original.
We are dumb. We are less than
7,000-year-old dumb civilization.
We are dumb. We are less than we are worse than uncivilized primitive savages. So everything had to be given. We had to be civilized. Okay. And here is one more nugget from D.N JHA. The ideological conflict between the Vedic Brahmanas and the followers of the newly born Protestant creeds may have been a potential source of social and religious tension, though an actual example of this is wanting.
Okay, he says may and is wanting.
He says though an actual example, meaning evidence is wanting.
There is no evidence.
He conjectures that it is the truth, that it had in fact occurred.
While calling it may.
May. Okay. This passed off, these were prescribed as lessons, Parag, in our textbooks.
But ICHR was a publishing house for rubbish, right?
At all levels, yeah. All right. Now, okay, what is the next? Remember, this Arun Shauri's book dedicates 3 chapters to this. And one chapter is rather lengthy. What I am reading out are just some small nuggets of the most egregious and the most flagrant sort of distortion. All right. Now, let's look at one more example. Okay, here is the thing. Quote, most Shudras seethe in discontent. It is not unlikely that under such foreign rulers as the Shakas and the Kushanas, who were not committed to the Varna ideology, they turned against the Brahmanas. This may explain why Manu provided a number of safeguards against the hostile activities of the Shudras. This is retrofitting of the worst sort. You take a present kind of social system, as society, people, fashions, trends, they evolve and change over the course of time organically. So you can't judge history by the current standards or belief systems and
their contextual,
social context. So this kind of thing is retrofitting of the worst sort. All right, and let's see what we have next. There you go. We come back once. He returns once again to the evil Brahmins. There you go. This is a great theory in the Marxist, land, la-la land of fantasy called Indian history. Okay, according to this theory, Brahmins depended for their livelihood exclusively on sacrifices, which means yajnas.
Okay.
By the way, the correct translation of the word yajna is not sacrifice. There is no English equivalent or non-Indian language equivalent to the word yajna. Yajna, yaja, okay, which generally means, in one sense, it means bringing together. So yajna means a great national endeavor of collective sharing of resources.
That is being portrayed as
a sacrifice. So let's come back to Mr. D.N JHA. So Brahmins depended exclusively on sacrifices for their livelihood. Buddhism undermined them by weaning the people from sacrifices. Next, he comes to its development. Okay, to save themselves, the Brahmins therefore appropriated a number of popular cults with significant following. Okay, and in the process, what happened? In the process, Brahmanical religion underwent some important changes, and most of the Vedic gods passed into oblivion, and their places were taken by Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva.
Preposterous. Absolute.
All right. Now, the Vedic gods include, some of the principal Vedic gods include Indra as a head, Agni, Varuna, Vayu, Yama, Maruts, and some of these are prominent. But the same Veda also has several invocations on Shiva, Vishnu and Brahma. Now, why they became known, how they evolved, this evolution, what he calls as, replaced by Vedic gods being replaced by Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. In popular imagination, this was a process of centuries and if not a millennium process of organic evolution. Even today, if anybody participates in a yajna or even in a Nitya Puja, all the Vedic hymns that are regularly chanted are all dedicated to these Vedic gods.
But this is
It
absolute.
didn't happen in the way of this class warfare and the evil Brahmins appropriating various cults, no. 2, there is also this great myth that Buddhism evolved as a sort of a revolt against the evil Brahminism as a myth. In fact, the Buddha himself says in many places that my philosophy, what I am preaching is nothing new. What I am preaching is, I am just recasting, I am putting in my own words the same wisdom, the same philosophy that all the great sages of Vedanta, Yesha Dhammo Sanatanaha is what he says.
He says that, right?
He says that my philosophy, my darshana
Stems from Sanatana.
is not any different at all from the Vedic or the darshana of the Vedanta or the Vedic philosophy. This guy, you see the level, at what all levels they have to lie and concoct falsehoods.
But he surpassed his guru in so many ways.
Completely, both in terms of vileness and crudeness, like I said, the
you're
sheer
right.
violence and the
Offensive, provocative, baseless.
Intentionally. So this is one more thing, all right? And so let's see. Now, okay. Elsewhere, remember, a couple of minutes back I said how D.N JHA says that most of the Hindu deities were imported from other cultures. Okay. Now here is what the same D.N JHA writes about Vishnu. Okay. There is this famous shloka in the Bhagavad Gita. We all know that. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bharata sambhavami yuge yuge. Right? Whenever the evil increases on the earth, I will take an avatara and come on this earth and vanquish the evil and establish dharma again. Right? So this is the thing. How does Mr. D.N JHA interpret it using his alleged infallible Marxist theoretical framework? I quote, okay, perhaps the idea of reincarnation, Sambhavami Yuge Yuge, perhaps the idea was borrowed from the Bodhisattva doctrine of Buddhism. It may have evolved with the identification of Vishnu with Krishna. अरे यार कितना जुबान है तुम्हारे बॉडी में, कहाँ कहाँ है तुम्हारे? How many tongues do you have, and where all do you have these tongues in your body? Stick to one point.
And again, everything is prefaced with may.
May, likely, may, perhaps, therefore.
Conjuncture is absolute. I mean, the conclusion is absolute.
Because this is, like I said, this is fantasy.
The infallible Marxist
this is
framework.
Fantasy. To serve the infallible theory. All right. Now, let's see. One more. This is rather delicious. Okay. This is awesome. So, over a period of time, with especially after the Islamic invasions, both the Hindu social order, the harmony of the society, prosperity, economic activity were disrupted on an unprecedented scale, and the Muslim rule also pretty much impoverished Indian economics for several centuries. So what is the reason? And of course, Indian businessmen, Hindu businessmen, could no longer carry on their commercial activity like they used to do before these invasions. So, why? What is the reason that D.N JHA supplies? Quote, the weakening of the commercial links with the Western world perhaps stopped the movement of artisans and traders from one part of the country to the other. And in the very next sentence, this is what he says. Immobile artisans therefore remained attached to villages where they produced for local consumption. In course of time, they, like the peasants, were also transferred to the recipients of village endowments.
Transferred as recipients of village endowments.
Village endowments, meaning they became serfs and tenants.
And again, this is prefaced with me.
All right. On the contrary, literally hundreds upon hundreds of inscriptions spread over a minimum of 1,000 years or 1,500 years. They show the innate dharmic character and the premium that Indian businessmen of all classes and all varnas, the premium that they placed on the virtue called dhanam or charity. Look at the way this fellow twists it. They considered, look, Parag, I'll give you one example, one random example. So, there was a great businessman. This is in the 2nd century CE, Shatavahana period, 2nd or 3rd century. There is a very, very wealthy Hindu businessman who, donated to everyone. This is pre-Islamic period, mind you. This also disproves this D.N JHA's and the Marxist fiction about
we had nothing original.
About a perpetual enmity between Hindus and Buddhists. Okay. So this Hindu businessman, he lived in Govardhan near Mathura, right? So he made a perpetual endowment to supply food, basically to supply the maintenance, livelihood for an entire school of Buddhist monks near Nasik.
Okay.
Okay. कहाँ है गोवर्धन, कहाँ है मथुरा और कहाँ नासिक?
कहाँ नासिक?
So what does that show about the travel, the ease of travel, and the identification of these places as sacred, and Buddhist monks, the reverence that people generally had towards people of people regarded as holy. So he earmarked a few hundred gold coins or things like that to build a cistern, a well basically, and provide for the food of these maintenance for these Buddhist monks.
And this is way back then.
Way back then. ये क्या बकवास कर रहा है?
It's more than bakwas, Anyway, we will come to that.
All right. Now, this is extraordinary. Quote: the Shanti Parva of the Mahabharata, which may be assigned to the Gupta period.
Shanti Parva, Mahabharata may be assigned to the Gupta
period. Okay. So it contains at least 9 verses which stress the need of combination of the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas. These may indicate some kind of concerted opposition from the Vaishyas and Shudras. There are a million mistakes out here. I mean, this is outright lying, Parag.
Yes, it is.
Okay, after Shanti Parva, our man comes to the Anushasana Parva, to prove this evil cabal of, the so-called caste system and the evil Brahmins. All right, there you go. This is from Anushasana Parva. What he says, quote: the Shudras seem to have been particularly hostile to the existing social order, and as evidence, quote, the Anushasana Parva of the Mahabharata represents them, that is, represents the Shudras, as destroyers of the king.
As destroyers of the king.
Meaning of the Kshatriya.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Another unnamed contemporary work. Okay, this is cited as evidence.
Unnamed contemporary work is
another
evidence.
Unnamed contemporary work describes them as hostile, violent, boastful, short-tempered, untruthful. Of who? Kshatriyas. Okay. And then, what he, characterizes these two parvas? He characterizes them as legal texts.
Sorry, as legal?
Legal texts.
Okay.
Okay. But after, making these boundless, unbounded, free fall of logic, what does D.N JHA conclude? Quote: what references to actual revolt by the Shudras against the upper classes are not recorded. But still, such a revolt happened.
How old is he now?
He died in 2021. He was 81 years old when he died. So D.N JHA's other notorious disservice to Indian history was both demonizing and underplaying the golden age of Indian history, which is the Gupta period. Right? Both in their territorial extent and the sheer spread, scale, depth and endurance of the Gupta legacy, it remains unparalleled till date. All right. Not only that, Guptas were great unifiers, and they, wore their Sanatana pride, like a great badge of honor. Okay, they celebrated it like no other Hindu kingdom ever did. Okay, they are equaled perhaps only by the Vijayanagara Empire. By that time, Vijayanagara Empire, India was no longer the same India of the Gupta period. So, fortunately, they have left behind such copious evidences, literary evidence, artistic evidence, monumental evidence in the sense of physical monuments, structures, cultural evidence, even those portions of that evidence which survives is rather phenomenal, both in terms of quality and quantity, in number also. So you can't ignore, no matter how much these Marxists try to whitewash or downplay it, they simply could not ignore it. So how do you circumvent this? You circumvent it by first floating a Marxist theory paper about history, which basically says that there is no such thing as a golden age in the history of any country or civilization. Okay, so you circumvent it using that bit of theory. Then you extrapolate it and apply it to the Gupta period. Ergo, what do you get?
And therefore,
exactly, and therefore, the Gupta period is not a golden age in Indian history. Now, that poses a further problem of the existence of evidence to the contrary. So, how do you explain? They explain it, again, by relying on the tried and tested tactic of retrofitting. Quote. So, what explains the extraordinary administrative efficiency of the Gupta Empire? D.N JHA answers, and I quote, "All important issues were placed before the assembly, and no decision was taken in the absence of unanimity among its members." Okay. But, what about the assemblies? The assemblies consisted mostly of Kshatriyas.
oh, so he brings that element in.
Okay. And so, these republics were really oligarchies and not true democracies. Close quote. You are talking of a period of Indian history in which the word democracy had no place, meaning it was not known at all.
Yeah,
They are all monarchies.
absolutely.
So look at the way he's retrofitting this, okay? And about the same point about the democracy, okay? So he says that rather according to D.N JHA, full democracy requires that the whole of India, remember you're talking of an India that existed 1500 years ago. This man ignores the fact that the rulers, Pallavas especially, from South India, they paid rich tributes to the Guptas. Okay. And he the Pallava ruler sought the permission of the Gupta king to, do something, bring in take a decision and so on. Okay. So this man completely ignores this mass of documented evidence which is available. Okay. And that finishes the bit about administration. What about the art, the extraordinary artistic heritage of the Guptas?
Systematic attack on everything. On everything dear to...
What about, the artistic evidence? Okay. And, say philosophy, art, literature. What about them? Okay. Ajanta, Ellora, Kalidasa, Aryabhatta, all these people, they are the inheritors of this Gupta, heritage. So, D.N JHA acknowledges, he condescends to acknowledge all these things as great works, but, okay. This is what he says about the paintings of the Ajanta caves. Quote, although the theme of paintings at Ajanta is religious, he's granting it, okay.
So kind.
One can see in them a dramatic panorama of the life of princes, nobles, warriors and sages.
Melodrama.
No, this is Marxist class warfare.
Okay, understood. Yeah.
That theory, this is where it leads to. Okay. Meaning, all those paintings depict the life of the so-called upper classes and not the starving poor peasants who were oppressed. Okay.
So they were excluded.
They were excluded in paintings. So therefore, this is called arguing from the absence of evidence. Because these classes in the society don't appear in the paintings. So means that they were automatically oppressed.
You create a theory to...
That is how it is. Okay. And next, this is what he speaks about Kalidasa. His eminence cannot be ignored. So how to demonize him? There you go. So, but the works of Kalidasa are not indicative of an intellectual rebirth or revival of literary activity. Okay? They merely imply a further development of the literary forms and styles which were evolving in the earlier period. So Kalidasa's contribution is zero, essentially. That's what it means. Okay? And then, finally, we come to, the climax of this man's demonization and vilification of the Gupta Empire. Okay? Gupta Empire, apart from calling it the Golden Age, it is also undoubtedly the pinnacle of Hindu Renaissance. Okay, and consolidation of the Hindu national life as a whole. Okay, what does he say? So, D.N JHA says that the so-called Hindu Renaissance, in fact, the term Hindu itself is a misnomer.
I was waiting for that. So, now after having stripped away every vestige.
Okay, so the term Hindu itself is a misnomer.
Okay.
Quote, it was first used by the Arabs in the post-Gupta period.
Okay. And why did they use the term?
Then to describe the inhabitants of the of India.
Okay.
Okay. That's right. Now, next, and this is the climax. Quote, the much publicized Hindu Renaissance of the Gupta period was in reality not a Renaissance, much less a Hindu one. Okay, and then he hammers it. I mean, this is so atrocious, so obnoxious. Quote, some Indian historians have been so enamored of the Guptas as to tirelessly speak of their rule as representing the golden age of Indian history. In an emotionally surcharged multi-volume work, we are told in the vein of a romantic lamentation that life was never happier under the Gupta rule. Yet it was during the period of the Guptas that in certain parts of the country, serfdom appeared, leading eventually to the economic bondage of the peasantry.
So he slips it in again without any basis.
Okay. This is his conclusion about the Gupta Empire. Women became an item of property and came to live in the perpetual tutelage of man, notwithstanding their idealization in art and literature. Alright? Next. Caste discussions and caste rigidity became sharper than ever. Law and justice showed a definite bias in favor of the higher castes. In fact, the opposite is actually true. I don't have time to go through, through that, but the opposite is true. Here's a formula. Whatever a Marxist pamphleteer, disguised as a historian, says is true about Indian history, its opposite is actually true. Next, he says, Fahian, the Chinese Buddhist pilgrim scholar who came to India during the reign of Chandragupta II, tells us that the people were generally happy. True. The upper classes were happy and prosperous and lived in comfort and ease, as can be judged from the contemporary art and literature. But this could have hardly been true of the lower orders. The untouchable class as a whole came to be degraded further in the social scale. Social tensions continued. Okay. But religion was used as an instrument for maintaining the Varna divided society.
So all these claims stem out of nowhere.
Zero evidence. So based on this monumental load of crap, what is the final conclusion that D.N JHA derives? Quote, for the upper classes, all periods in history have been golden. For the masses, none. The truly golden age of the people does not lie in the past, but in the future.
Which will be under the regime patronizing him.
Under the regime.
Patronizing him.
Under the regime under a purist communist regime.
The only form of salvation.
Yes. This is his, mountain of garbage passing off as the history of the Gupta Empire. Okay. So again, we have given the, throughout all these examples, we see the standard Marxist formula for arriving at infallible historical truths. So they follow a sequence, this formula, it follows a sequence of words. Maybe, perhaps, probably, mostly, most likely, therefore.
And therefore. And all these lead to, and therefore, a finite, irrefutable conclusion.
Irrefutable conclusion. Okay. And you know what is D.N JHA's standard response when he was repeatedly questioned and criticized about the utterly offensive nature of his abuse, especially
he was questioned,
against Hindu deities? You know what was his standard response? In his own words, quote, "If the devotees of Rama and Krishna feel hurt because of it," meaning because of my, alleged history writing, if the devotees of Rama and Krishna feel hurt because of it, how can we help it? A historian cannot murder history to show consideration for a belief or tradition. Okay, fair enough. But does D.N JHA and his gang members, do they take the same kind of liberties with the feelings of the followers of the religion founded by Prophet Muhammad? We all know the answer.
Yeah.
That is the litmus test.
It is.
That
continues to be the litmus test today as well.
All right. And another brazen historical fraud that is credited to D.N JHA's bank account of distortions is the lengths to which he has gone to deny the historical truth of one incident. The heartless demolition, pillaging and the burning of the famous Nalanda University.
Oh, he's tried to. Oh, he did that too.
Yes, he's written and this is as recent as 2004. 2004, D.N JHA was a president of the Indian History Congress, a very prestigious body. As president, he gave a lecture, and in that, this is what he says about the destruction of the Nalanda University, and I quote, "A Tibetan tradition has it that the Kalachuri king Karna of 11th century destroyed many Buddhist temples and monasteries in Magadha, and the Tibetan text Pag Sam John Zhang refers to the burning of the library of Nalanda by some Hindu fanatics." This is his claim.
Is there a book like that at all?
Yeah, it is there. It is a work. It is a Tibetan work. But it doesn't say what
he's claiming.
Says. Yeah. And it definitely doesn't mention a modern term.
Fanatic.
Called Hindu fanatic.
Hindu fanatic.
No Hindu is a fanatic.
Yeah.
No, Hindu fanatic is another hot air balloon invented by the Marxists, the global left, just like the other meaningless term, Islamophobia. Okay. And this lecture outraged Arun Shourie so much that he wrote a long form, beautiful form, a delicious rebuttal in Indian Express. Okay. And I'll read out some excerpts from it. Quote, "Hindu fanatics. The expression struck me as odd. A Tibetan text of the 18th century using so current an expression as Hindu fanatics? Especially so because on D.N JHA's own reckoning, Hindu Dharma is an invention of the British in the late 19th century.
Nailed it.
So what is this Tibetan text? What does it say? Had JHA looked it up? Okay, then he says, Pag Sam John Zhang was written by Sumpa Khan Po Yese Pal Jor. I'm getting pronunciations bad, but
it's fine. But for the point, it's valid.
The author lived in 1704 to 1788. That is 500 years after the destruction of Nalanda. The first thing that strikes us, our historian D.N JHA disregards the contemporaneous account Tabaqat-e-Nasiri and opts for a text written 500 years after the event. I have read Tabaqati Nasiri, and I've mentioned this. I've dedicated one full chapter in Invaders and Infidels, book 2, describing, from first-hand sources about its destruction. Okay, so continues. Arun Shourie continues. But had D.N JHA read the text at all? Could a self-respecting Marxist have at all believed what is written in it? This is how Sharat Chandra Das, another Marxist, the translator and editor of Pag Sam John Zhang, gives the account of the destruction of Nalanda as given in that Tibetan text. While a religious sermon was being delivered in the temple that is the king, Magadha king, had erected at Nalanda, a few young monks threw washing water at 2 Tirthaka beggars. The beggars, being angry, set fire on the 3 shrines of the Dharma Ganja, the Buddhist University of Nalanda. That is, the 3 shrines are Ratnasagara, Ratnaranjaka, including the 9-story building called Ratnadadhi, which contained the library of sacred books. And Arun Shourie asks, 2 beggars could go from building to building on that huge campus, and with all the monks present in the campus, burn down the entire huge scattered complex? But we strain unnecessarily. There is a clue in D.N JHA's lecture itself. He doesn't cite the Tibetan text, but he does what Marxists do. He cites another Marxist citing the Tibetan text.
Convenient. Which is again that familiar tactic.
Okay. And with that, we can come to the last few points on today's episode. The first point is D.N JHA's role in the Ayodhya episode. We have mentioned these eminent distorians, what they did and how they were directly responsible for the fall of the disputed structure and all the riots and all that thing that happened. So, D.N JHA likewise was also one of the authors of a pamphlet titled Ram Janmabhoomi Babri Masjid, a historian's report to the nation. This was published in 1991 and submitted to the government. Other comrades of this pamphlet include his guru R.S. Sharma, Suraj Bhan and Athar Ali. This pamphlet, what it does is that it brazenly denies that there ever existed a Hindu temple on the site of the former disputed structure. Indeed, it took some gall on the part of these vandals of history to write what is basically a Marxist screed that claimed to somehow prove that the Archaeological Survey of India's research, that the ASI's research was false. And of course, we all know what happened. In 2009, the Supreme Court, in its hearings on the Ayodhya matter, it threw out this Marxist pamphlet, citing it as a mere opinion. And the Supreme Court was being kind.
The Supreme Court did that. It called it mere opinion.
And finally, let's not forget the most important point, which applies in equal measure to all the eminent distorians. Let's not forget the fact that D.N JHA was also the author of multiple history textbooks which were produced by the NCERT. This history was taught to our school children. In fact, if you were educated in CBSE or ICSE, it is likely that your class 5, class 6 textbooks onwards, some chapters or entire history books would have been written by D.N JHA.
I'm CBSE, I'm trying to recollect.
It would have been written by D.N JHA.
Yeah.
In other words, Dwijendra Narayan Jha is one among the eminent distorians, eminent Marxist vandals of Indian history who has poisoned a minimum of 2 generations of Indians. And on that note, we can conclude today's episode and our mega series exposing the destruction of Indian history by Marxist ideologues.
So like Sandeep said, with the D.N JHA, we conclude the series on the destruction of Indian history by Marxists. So first of all, a big thank you to all of you for staying with us through the series and giving us the feedback that has kept us going. So, much appreciated. And I'd like to thank two people. I'm sure all of you will join me in doing that. One is Sandeep Balakrishna, obviously, for all the knowledge that he has put forth in light through the series. And like I said right at the beginning, and I repeated in multiple episodes, this series, when strung together, should form the antidote to all the distortion, perversion, and damage done by these historians. So, really, it's invaluable service that people like Sandeep are doing to correcting these distortions. And another gentleman, which I'm sure Sandeep will join me in thanking, is Arun Shourie. Arun Shourie's book, Eminent Distorians. Some of you have been asking for reading references. This is the book. If you haven't read it, do look at it as well. So, thank you again, Sandeep, for taking us through this mega series and exposing each distorian and the damage that they've caused. So, with that, we shall now move on to another exciting series, and we are working on making sure that it remains as engrossing and revealing as you would have found this series on history. And we will be counting on Sandeep's research and knowledge to bring that series to life in the next episode, which will be the commencement of the next series. So thank you all. Thank you so much for joining us for the series. And we look forward to you liking, sharing, subscribing, and also giving your super thanks to the series so that an interested audience gets to know more about this. And the endeavor shall continue through the next series. So thanks a lot, and we shall see you again for the next series.